So I think we're going to be turning the table now because we've been listening to entrepreneurs who are basically providing technology to the customers all over the world. Now we have a chance to have our one and only representative of the customer here today. For those of you who don't know, CIBC stands for the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. So we not only have a global corporate, we have an imperial corporate here today. So Kevin, I looked through your area of responsibilities and it'd be too long to go through all of them. I think in a nutshell it's technology and operations covers about 10 different areas, I think. It would be good if you could just give us a bit of a scope for what that entails and maybe a word about what the bank does, because there are different forms of banks, as we know, and where the bank is operating.
Yeah, so we're 150 years old last year, so one of the oldest banks in Canada. We have 4 revenue-generating business units: the retail bank, commercial and wealth, as joined together in one business unit, our capital markets business, and our recently formed commercial and wealth business in the U.S. We just finished an acquisition of a bank in Chicago last June. Those are supported by any number of units like mine. We're the largest unit that supports the organization. We operate mostly in North America, although we do have offices in London, in Asia, in South America, and we own a bank in the Caribbean as well. My group has about 11,000 employees, 5,000 in technology. The rest is split between the back office, procurement, real estate, enterprise security, and our enterprise project office.
Didn't you launch some digital banking as well?
We did. We launched two digital banks, one in Canada, and then as of Monday of this week, we launched a digital bank in the U.S. called CIBC Agility, and it's just a savings mechanism at this point, a deposit gathering.
So what brings you to San Francisco? I mean, apart from being a sponsor of this event, which is obviously wonderful for us, have you picked up any ideas, whether it be in artificial intelligence or new technology, that you think you can bring back home?
Yeah, there's always lots of new things that are adaptable, but how does it fit within the ecosystem? And so, one of the things I encourage folks in the room to think about is how does your product or service actually fit into the complexity of a large organization? And if you walked a day in my shoes, how would you actually fit it in? What thing do I need to unplug to plug this thing in, or how do I fit it in with all the rest of the products and services and capabilities that we have? And that's actually the hard part. It's actually not the capability that you bring to the table. It's how do I plug it into the rest of the organization.
Can you share with us some previous major innovation that was driven by technology?
Yeah. So back in 2012, before there was Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, and some of the mobile wallets, the banks in Canada believed that each bank would own the mobile wallet on behalf of the clients. And so, one of the Horizon 3 activities that we looked at was to create our own mobile wallet. So think of the ecosystem back in 2012. So we built that on a BlackBerry, of all things. Spent a lot of money doing it. We had 7 global firsts in terms of capability that we had. Clearly, when those other wallets that I mentioned came along, that was a fight that CIBC and the other banks were not going to fight. The good news out of that was all the learnings we got out of it. One, could we do some really complex engineering, per the conversation that was up here before I came up, so that was actually very good. It actually gave us a good name in the marketplace, so our ability to actually recruit people out of school, we had a real buzz as to what we were doing because of that. And 3, we were really informed about what our clients wanted versus what we wanted our clients to have. And so, we believed we were going to control the ecosystem when those other wallets came to market, our clients wanted those. And so we had to switch then our focus to how do we make the onboarding to those wallets a great client experience, because that's what the client wanted. So we wanted to own the client's experience in the onboarding, but use somebody else's capability. So those were very good. Also, given the time and effort we spent on that activity, how many more of those would you do, and were you ever going to get the return out of it? So we've really dialed back into the other horizons from there.
I remember I was at Vodafone in those days, and we were trying to make sure that we had the ultimate customer relationship, and unfortunately I think that we didn't win. We almost turned into a dumb pipe, as opposed to owning the customer relationship, which I think was mentioned a number of times today, and is essentially your real long-term value in whatever you do. You mentioned the introduction, the technology, and the difficulty sometimes to plug it into whatever systems you have. And I guess that brings up the topic of security. I think any corporation that goes into innovation or installs new software, new systems, is confronted with security issues. But when it comes to a bank, it takes a completely different dimension, I think. So can you share some experiences and some thoughts on that?
So we're the only bank in Canada where we've combined our physical security group and our people protection activities investigation unit with our cyber group. So we think the industry sharing, just the threat intelligence inside the organization amongst the group is very beneficial, and so we combined that about a year ago. Canada is not as mature as other G7 nations in terms of security posture, security strategy and such, and so one of the things we do as an industry group is to try and influence an outcome, because if one bank has an issue, all of financial services is called into question at that point. Things that worry me the most are internal threats from our employee base or customer base. I worry about exploitation of vulnerabilities that our people would have, and so we've recently done some red teaming exercise on that to see how our employees can get exploited, and it was some pretty basic dumb stuff that was going on, so very good learning. We also don't graduate enough kids out of school that actually can do security work as opposed to create security products. And so, as Luc said, banks are held to a bit of a higher standard than other companies, and so we have large workforces dedicated to, analysis, threat hunting and such, and we find we just can't acquire enough skills, and the universities are either asking them to take on roles like everybody here in the room and create new exciting things, or they're still in the old cryptography arena, and those aren't the types of skills that we're looking for, and so we're constantly trying to influence the education sector on what we're looking for. The other thing I'd say is we're very dependent on what I'd say is adjacent industry, so we have no line of sight on what could happen to the power grid. That information is not readily shared. In Toronto, we got a massive concentration risk in the downtown core, all on one power station, which is quite remarkable. When you try to get any information out of the power providers, they go silent. They're regulated by a different entity than we are. Same with the telecommunications. We have really only 3 large ones in Canada. They're also regulated by something different, but we're all beholden to them. And so just managing through the ecosystem is actually quite difficult.
Would you have any, knowing how much of a barrier it is, any recommendation to the companies when they come see you as to what they should be kind of being prepared for, and maybe what they should anticipate in terms of security topics?
Yeah, so just, we deal with lots of companies like everybody in the room. We're a buyer, not a creator. We'd rather integrate and create the client experience than actually create any of the great services that you folks create. But, you need to understand that as a bank, we operate probably at a higher level of security and complexity than maybe what you're used to. Our teams do a really good job of working with companies like all of you and actually raising the bar. So we give the reverse free consulting to lots of organizations to actually get them to what would be acceptable for a financial institution. I think the other thing I would say is just understand the complexity under which we operate, as I said earlier, walk a day and what we have to deal with, and you know, have some empathy towards the size of the organization, get some good sponsorship on the way in, and life is good.
Now the question, which I'm sure everybody would be interested in, is how do I get in, and I got the question last year, so I definitely have to ask you, how do I get a foot in the door in a bank like yours, or basically in a big corporation? What's the best level for me to try to get and do business with you?
So don't send an email or call the CEO. That would be the first thing, because everybody just gets their back up when that message flows downhill. And by the way, I get lots of those every day from my boss. It's really try to get an understanding through your competitive intel on how we're organized. So I described the tech organization and the business unit. So find the right sponsor in wherever you're trying to get in. So if it's in the security area, then clearly that's in my world, and you know, try to understand where the security department is. If it's a client-facing value proposition that you have, go find the business that actually has that as a business, understand their ecosystem, and look for a sponsor to get you in the door. We subscribe to not having to shadow people around that come to see the business by sticking one of my folks with them, so you know, dumb things don't happen. We have a great relationship with the businesses. The businesses will engage us at the right time. So sponsorship is key. And again, understand what our environment is. We're not the U.S. We have things that the U.S. doesn't have. Understand that environment. Understand who your competitors are, and you know, I'd get in at the VP level. They tend to be the decision makers and the influencers in the organization, and that'd be the recommendation.
So maybe a related question, which is more functional. If I had discovered the latest marketing tool that I think a bank could be useful as, should I go to the kind of technical side of the company? Should I go to the marketing side of a bank?
I'd go to the marketing side. So we don't, other than in security, we don't actually do technology for technology's sake. Everything that we do, whether it's the back office or in our tech world, is really for the business units. And so we want the business units to drive the change. And if it's an innovative thing, all the better. So the way we're constructed from an innovation perspective, we have an innovation council, and all of the businesses are represented on the council. And if any of the business units want to do anything innovative, it's their money that they're bringing to the table to do it. There's no central pot. And so the businesses really need to stand behind what it is they want to do, because that's competing with their BAU activities. And so, you know, short answer would be into the marketing group, not into the tech group.
And the marketing people are receptive enough
Yep.
to new technology?
Yep.
Or is it
always
through that
looking,
innovation
always looking
group?
for the next thing. Yep.
Okay, very good. That's quite unique, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to share with the audience, which I haven't asked you, and you always wanted to tell everybody in San Francisco?
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I really like the energy when I come down. I unfortunately don't come down often enough. I always get good ideas. Met with a number of companies this morning. Some we use, some we don't. The ones we used, I learned a lot more than what my folks were telling me. So that was a good exercise for me. Don't be afraid to be bold. Just understand that the things that are as size of our organization are a bit different than smaller organizations, and we have lots of interfaces and heavily regulated. So just understand the audience.
Very good. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.